It is curious to observe, almost like an entomologist studying a shimmering insect about to fling itself into a lamp. The figure of the modern streamer, this inhabitant of the digital underworld who believes he controls his own destiny, while in reality, dancing obediently to the rhythm of invisible algorithms. In today's America, where even hope must pay rent, becoming a Twitch streamer is less a professional choice, and more, a patient dive into a polished, glittering abyss coated with illusory promises. And what is most fascinating, or tragic, is that so many jump in headfirst with a naive smile, convinced they will be chosen by the goddess of visibility. The daily ritual of this aspiring digital celebrity begins with a kind of religious devotion to the Go Live button. He believes that by pressing it, he will open portals to a more dignified existence. But what actually emerges is a drifting audience of 3 silent viewers, 2 of whom are asleep, and the third is simply waiting for the right moment to write lag. Yet he persists, with the almost poetic determination of someone battling against his own irrelevance, speaking into the void as if the whole of America were on the verge of listening. Perhaps it is precisely this contrast between hope and reality that makes everything so miserably enchanting. The American streamer lives in a land where everything promises instant ascent, except his own life. He creates complex overlays, invests in microphones that cost half his paycheck, and buys colorful lights to illuminate a carefully engineered loneliness. After all, it is not enough to be an unrecognized hero, one must also look good while emotionally imploding before a ghostly audience. The United States, that homeland that loves to sell dreams wrapped in shiny paper, fuels the fantasy that effort inevitably becomes glory. However, the streamer discovers that the platform is not a democracy but an oligarchy, where untouchable stars reign and billions of mortals compete, like starving ants, for crumbs of attention. Twitch is a modern coliseum. The blood is not spilled on the ground, but in the form of overtime, burnout, and anxiety, all streamed in 1080p, while the view counter remains stubbornly still. There is something ironically philosophical in the way this streamer tries, again and again, to reinvent his content to please an algorithm that never smiles back. He adjusts schedules, changes his tone of voice, switches the game he plays, and even attempts to be funnier, as if desperation had become a performing art. But, of course, none of it works, because the algorithm has no mercy, no humor, no memory. It simply consumes. And while it consumes, it slowly erodes the person who dares to challenge it. Then comes monetization, that mirage that shines brightly in the distance, as if whispering, "Keep going, you're almost there." But almost truly means thousands of hours streamed, to almost nobody. The streamer celebrates when he finally receives a few dollars, while conveniently ignoring or trying to ignore the fact that he spent 10 times more on equipment, electricity, and iced coffee that kept him awake during meaningless overnight streams. America sells expensive dreams. Twitch delivers them in installments, often with emotional interest rates. The audience, when it finally appears, brings with it a very particular kind of enchantment. There's the viewer who shows up only to demand that the streamer play a different game. There's the hyperactive teenager who desperately wants parental attention and finds in the streamer a figure who should never assume that role. And there's the professional critic, always ready to fire insults with the precision of a frustrated surgeon. And the streamer, wearing a trembling smile, must handle this digital fauna while trying to preserve what little remains of his self-esteem. Perhaps the most curious, maybe even comical part, is that the streamer begins to measure his human worth in numbers. Followers, views, subs, bits, donations, watch hours. Everything becomes a metric. Everything becomes a chart. Everything becomes undeniable proof that maybe he is not as interesting as he once imagined. This cruel metamorphosis transforms human beings into walking graphs, into fragile statistics tied to a platform that can erase their visibility at any moment with the ease of flipping a light switch. There is also the social dimension of the disaster, explaining to family and friends what it means to be a streamer. Many pretend to understand, nod politely, but the truth remains suspended in the air. For most people, this is not called a career. It is called a hobby with delusions of grandeur. Modern America respects professions that generate quick, predictable profit. Being a streamer is the absolute opposite of that. It is living in constant uncertainty, in a murky zone between art, entertainment, self-punishment, and a strange type of voluntary servitude. And yet, there is something lyrically tragic in this endless pursuit of relevance. The streamer becomes a living metaphor for the contemporary American, always connected, always tired, always trying to prove his worth to an invisible audience that is never satisfied. He is the perfect reflection of a country that turned competition into a sacrament in public exposure, into a kind of secular salvation. Each failed stream is another reminder that, deep down, no one is really paying attention. In time, the streamer realizes that the platform demands far more than it gives. He must be a host, comedian, editor, social media manager, psychologist, entertainer, sound technician, content creator, and crisis manager, all at once, and usually without proportional compensation. Twitch is an immense stage, but it rarely offers the applause needed for someone to feel alive upon it. Thus the streamer continues, driven not by recognition but by a stubborn hope that maybe one day someone will notice his effort. But the truth, raw, cold, and elegantly bitter, is that most will never be found. Their streams will vanish in the infinite ocean of broadcasts, as silent as a whisper, lost in the wind. And yet, they continue, perhaps out of pride, perhaps out of stubbornness, perhaps out of that naive spark that still believes dreams can escape the industrial grinder of contemporary America. And it is this poetic, almost suicidal insistence that gives the streamer his melancholic charm, his narrative value, his irresistible tragedy. In the end, being a Twitch streamer in today's America is a meticulous exercise in emotional endurance. It is trying to survive while being consumed, trying to shine while being overshadowed, trying to exist while the world seems too busy to notice. An elegant misery, a modern disgrace, a silent spectacle of worn-out ambition. And somehow, at the core of all this, there is beauty, a sad, fractured beauty, but still human. Because despite everything, the streamer keeps pressing the go live button, as if he still believed that someone, somewhere, will finally show up.